The last $10. The streets of New Haven pulsed with life. Merchants shouted over the din of hover bikes racing through narrow alleys, while neon signs cast colorful shadows across the bustling marketplace. It was a city of extremes. Gleaming towers stretched toward the stars above, while below, the forgotten masses struggled to survive in the shadows. Era moved through the crowd like a ghost, her fingers wrapped protectively around a crumpled $10 bill in her pocket. It was all she had left, barely enough for a single meal. Her stomach cramped with hunger, and the thought of warm bread made her mouth water. But as she turned into a narrow alley, she stopped dead in her tracks. There, huddled beneath the sickly glow of a flickering holographic advertisement, was something extraordinary. A small dragon, no bigger than a house cat, trembled against the cold concrete. Its once brilliant scales were dull with grime, and its tiny wings were folded tight against its frail body. Golden eyes, clouded with exhaustion, looked up at her with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. Dragons were rare in this part of the galaxy, creatures of legend that belonged to the frontier worlds, not the grimy back alleys of New Haven. Yet here one was, starving and alone. A weak sound escaped the creature's throat, something between a whimper and a plea. It lifted its head slightly, and Era felt her heart break. Without thinking, she knelt down and pulled out her last $10. Here, she whispered, extending the money toward the dragon. It's all I have, but maybe it'll help somehow. The dragon stared at her, as if trying to understand this impossible act of kindness. Slowly, it reached out with a trembling claw and gently took the bill, holding it as if it were made of gold. For just a moment, a soft glow flickered through its scales, brief but unmistakable. With one final look at Era, the dragon slipped away into the maze of alleyways, disappearing like a dream. Era remained kneeling long after it was gone, wondering what she had just done. She had no logical reason for giving away her last bit of money to a creature that might not even understand currency. But somehow, it had felt right. As she finally stood and walked away, she never expected to see the dragon again. After all, what were the chances that one small act of kindness could possibly matter in a galaxy so vast and unforgiving? Years of wonder. The days following her encounter with the dragon were some of the hardest Era had ever faced. She survived on scraps and odd jobs, her stomach constantly reminding her of the money she'd given away. Sometimes, in her darkest moments, she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. But whenever doubt crept in, she remembered those golden eyes and felt a strange peace settle over her. Weeks turned to months, and gradually, Era's luck began to change. A kind shopkeeper offered her steady work. A scholarship opportunity appeared just when she needed it most. Small miracles that she attributed to chance, but which seemed to follow her like breadcrumbs leading towards something greater. Years passed, and Era found her calling among the stars. She became a xenobiologist, dedicating her life to studying the incredible creatures that inhabited the galaxy's unexplored worlds. She encountered beings that most people only heard about in whispered legends, shadow creatures that could phase through solid matter, cloud serpents that swam through atmospheric layers, and crystalline entities that communicated through pure light. Each discovery filled her with wonder, but there was always one creature she hoped to encounter again. In quiet moments aboard research vessels or while camping under alien skies, she would think about that small dragon. Had it survived? Had her $10 somehow made a difference? The questions followed her across the galaxy, unanswered but never forgotten. Decades accumulated like stardust. Era became renowned in her field, respected for her compassion toward alien life and her groundbreaking research. She had seen wonders beyond imagination, yet that one night in New Haven's alley remained vivid in her memory, a reminder of the moment her life had truly begun. But the universe, Era would soon learn, has a way of completing circles that seem impossibly large. And sometimes, the most extraordinary reunions happen when we least expect them. The return. 30 years had transformed Era from a desperate girl on New Haven streets into one of the galaxy's most respected xenobiologists. She stood now on the observation deck of the research vessel Endeavour, watching storm clouds swirl across the surface of an uncharted planet. Her team had detected something unprecedented, massive life forms unlike anything in their databases. The ship hummed with anticipation as they prepared for their first survey mission. Era checked her equipment one final time, her mind focused on the scientific opportunity ahead. But as she gazed out at the planet's turbulent atmosphere, a deep, resonant sound filled the air around the ship. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't coming from the vessel's systems. It was something else entirely, something alive and impossibly vast. Dr. Era, her assistant, called from the bridge, voice tight with excitement and fear. "You need to see this." Era hurried to the main viewer, where her team stood in stunned silence. Rising from the planet's cloud layer was a creature of impossible beauty and size. A dragon, but not like the small, trembling thing she'd found all those years ago. This was a being of majesty and power, its scales gleaming like molten gold, its wings spanning what looked like kilometers. As the magnificent creature approached their ship, Era felt a strange tingling in her chest, a recognition that defied logic. The dragon's eyes, vast and intelligent, seemed to look directly at her through the viewport. And in those eyes, she saw something that made her heart skip. They were golden. The same golden eyes that had looked up at her with desperate hope in that New Haven alley 3 decades ago. "Impossible," she whispered, but even as she spoke, she knew it was true. The dragon positioned itself alongside their ship, and to everyone's amazement, it began to communicate, not through words, but through complex patterns of light that rippled across its scales. The ship's translation system struggled to process the alien language, but gradually, a message formed on their screens. "I have been waiting," the lights pulsed. "The one who showed kindness when kindness was all she had. I have been waiting to return what was given." The truth revealed. The research vessel's communication array crackled to life as the massive dragon's bioluminescent patterns synchronized with their translation systems. Era's hands trembled as she stepped forward, still unable to fully believe what she was seeing. You're the dragon from the alley," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But how? You were so small, so..." The dragon's response came through the ship's speakers, its voice now deep and resonant, filled with ancient wisdom. "I was dying, Era Chin. Not just from hunger, but from something far worse, despair. I had been cast out from my world, stripped of my true form as punishment for defying the Dragon Council's isolationist policies." Era's scientific mind reeled. "Cast out? Stripped of your form? I believed that our kind should help other species, not hide among the stars. For this heresy, I was diminished, made small and powerless, left to survive or perish in your world." The lights across the dragon's scales pulsed with remembered pain. "That night in New Haven, I had all but given up hope. I was prepared to fade away, forgotten and alone. But the $10. Era began. "It wasn't the money that saved me," the dragon interrupted gently. "It was the act itself. You gave everything you had to a stranger, to a creature you didn't understand, with no expectation of reward. That pure compassion broke the curse that bound me." The truth hit Era like a physical blow. "You're saying that my giving you the money restored my true form, yes. But more than that, it proved to the Council that some beings, regardless of species, possessed the very qualities they claimed were extinct in the galaxy. Your kindness didn't just save me, Era. It changed the fundamental laws that had governed dragonkind for millennia." Around the observation deck, her research team stood in stunned silence. This wasn't just a first contact scenario, this was a revelation that rewrote everything they thought they knew about compassion, consequence, and the interconnectedness of all life. "I've spent 30 years searching for you," the dragon continued, "waiting for the moment when I could properly thank you and share what your gift has accomplished. The circle complete." "What do you mean?" Era asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her shock. "What has my gift accomplished?" The dragon's massive form shifted, and the lights across its scales formed what Era somehow recognized as a smile. Because of your act of selfless kindness, the Dragon Council decreed that our species would no longer remain hidden. We have spent these 30 years quietly helping struggling civilizations across the galaxy, sharing knowledge, preventing wars, healing wounded worlds. As if summoned by his words, other shapes began emerging from the planet's cloud cover. Dragons of every size and color, their scales gleaming like living jewels against the cosmic backdrop. The research vessel was suddenly surrounded by dozens of the magnificent beings, each one radiating peace and ancient wisdom. This world, the dragon gestured with one massive wing toward the planet below, was dying. Its ecosystem was collapsing, its people facing extinction. We've spent years carefully restoring it, and now it thrives again. This is just one of thousands of worlds we've helped, all because a hungry girl in New Haven chose compassion over self-preservation. Tears streamed down Era's face as the magnitude of it all hit her. I just wanted to help. It seemed like the right thing to do. And that, the dragon said with infinite gentleness, is exactly why it worked. True kindness asks for nothing in return, expects no reward, seeks no recognition. It simply is. You gave not because you had much to give, but because you saw a need and chose to meet it with what little you had. The dragon moved closer to the ship, and Era could see her own reflection in his vast golden eyes, the same eyes that had looked up at her with such desperate hope all those years ago. I never learned your name, she said softly. I am called Zephyr of the Golden Dawn, he replied. And I have a gift for you, Era Chin. Not repayment, for kindness cannot be repaid, but an invitation. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders you have yet to discover. Would you consider joining us? Your compassion and scientific knowledge could help us reach species we've never been able to communicate with before. Era looked around at her research team, at the life she'd built, at everything she'd accomplished. Then she looked back at Zephyr and smiled. I'd be honored, she said. As the research vessel prepared to dock with the Dragon fleet, Era reflected on the strange journey that had led her here. 30 years ago, she'd given away her last $10 to a starving creature in an alley. Today, that same creature was offering her the chance to help heal an entire galaxy. She thought about all the people who said kindness was weakness, that generosity was foolishness, that helping others was a luxury only the wealthy could afford. How wrong they had been. Sometimes, Era realized, the smallest acts of compassion create the largest ripples. Sometimes, giving everything you have, even when it's almost nothing, can change not just one life, but the destiny of countless worlds. As the ship docked with the Dragon fleet and Era prepared to begin the greatest adventure of her life, she whispered a quiet thank you to that scared, hungry girl who had made an impossible choice in a New Haven alley all those years ago. The circle was complete. The gift had returned, multiplied beyond imagination. And the galaxy would never be the same. The end.